All right, so for this problem, we are going to be taking an area, rotating it about an axis, and figuring out what the volume of the solid is. You are going to see lots of these problems throughout the year. This will keep popping up chapter out of chapter, or chapter by chapter, until we get to chapter 8, when we will learn how to do this using calculus. So just a fair warning, you're going to see these problems all the time, so it's good to make sure you can do them right away. So I'm going to draw a quick sketch. So I have negative x plus 5 from 1 to 3. So if I plug in 1, I get negative 1 plus 5, which is 4. And if I plug in 3, negative 3 plus 5 is 2. So I have that line. And then from 3 to 6, I have y is equal to 2. So a lot of students get confused, like if you just have a number here. Just remember, this is like f of x equals negative x plus 5. F of x equals 2. Well, y equals 2 is just a horizontal line. And there we go. So we're going to take the area under this curve. Let's try that again. There we go. And we are going to shade it in, and we are going to rotate that around the x-axis. So first of all, I want to consider what this is going to look like. So, and this is another thing you're going to be practicing throughout the year, is drawing three-dimensional figures. So I'm going to start with, I just kind of lightly sketch the kind of symmetry on the other side so I can get an idea of what this is going to look like. And then because it is three-dimensional and it's rotated, each slice is going to be like circular in nature because you're rotating it around, which creates a circle. So if I were to sketch this, it's going to look something like this. Okay. And actually, I'm going to make it even better. I'm going to use like a dashed. All right. And those thicker bands are kind of facing towards us. All right. So it looks something like this, like part of a flashlight, I'm going to call it. And we want to figure out what is the volume of this object. So what you need to do is use our notes from day 1 or day 2, which is volumes of solids, and make sure that you know those formulas. I will say the formulas we use the most that I do want you to memorize are cylinder and cone. You need to know these this year. We use them all the time. Is the volume of a cylinder and a cone. Make sure you know them. And in this case, we have both. So you'll notice that we have part of a cone here, right? If I were to take kind of this first area, that's like part of a cone, or if I'm looking at my picture, it looks like kind of that, like part of a cone. But then on the outside, I have a this cylinder piece. So what I'm going to do is figure out my like overlapping piece here. So I've kind of got this orange overlapping piece. So how do I find the volume of the overlapping piece? And then what I can do is I can find this large cone, subtract the overlapping piece, and then add it to the area of my cylinder. Okay, so I'm going to have, again, I'm going to have my large cone minus the overlapping piece, and then I'm going to add my cylinder. Okay, so you always kind of want to walk yourself through before you start just like plugging stuff into formulas. Like, what is the actual volume? What is the shape actually going to be? So because I have that overlapping piece, I am going to have to subtract it. Okay, so let's start with the large cone. So the large cone has a radius of, so mark my radius here, that's going to be a radius of 4. So my large cone has a radius of 4, and the volume of a cone is 1/3 pi r squared h. So the radius is 4, and then the h is the length of it. So we're going from 1 to, and then I have to figure out where does it end. So where does this line touch the x-axis? So, okay, so what's going to make that 0? 5. So if I were to extend the line, because remember the large cone, I kind of had to like add onto the the piece ending at 3, I had to like add on this overlapping piece to get a full cone. That's going to end at x equals 5. So if I have from 1 to 5, that's not a height of 5, that's actually a height of 4 from 1 to 5. So my height in this case is also 4. Okay, and then what about my overlapping piece? Okay, my overlapping piece is a little cone here. Okay, if I was thinking about inside, I'm actually cutting off, or my overlapping piece is this little cone. So the area of the volume of a cone is 1/3 pi r squared h. So what is the radius of my overlapping piece? Well, if I have x is equal to 3, my y value is 2. So that means the radius, okay, the radius right here, that's going to be 2. And then this length here, we already figured out that the line crosses the x-axis at 5. So then from 3 to 5, that's a height of 2. Okay. So I've got my large cone, I've got my overlapping piece, which I am going to have to subtract. And then I've got my cylinder. So my cylinder, okay, that one's easy. That's going to be pi r squared h. So pi, your radius is 2. And the height is going to be from 3 to 6. That's 3. Okay. So again, I think the most confusing part of this is honestly that overlapping piece and understanding that you have a large cone with a little cone cut out. But once you cut out that overlapping piece and you end up with, so these two pieces here create this. And then the cylinder creates the extra part, right? The like handle part of the flashlight. So I now can take 4 cubed, which is 64/3 pi. That's my large cone. I subtract my overlapping cone, my little cone, and that's 8/3 pi. And then I'm going to add my cylinder onto that, which is 12 pi. Okay. And I do want you to go ahead and simplify. 64 minus 8 is 56/3 pi. That is not easily divisible, so I'm okay with you keeping it 56/3 pi plus 12 pi. So when I say simplify, generally what I want you to do is if they already have common denominators, I do want you to add or subtract them. And then this does not have a common denominator, so you could simplify this further, and we'll be talking about this more in the year, but I'm actually okay with you leaving your answer like this. If you have fractions that can be simplified easily, like and create integers, like if you had 60/3, I would want you to change that to 20. Or if this was like 17/3 and I was adding it to 56/3, I would want you to add them together. So if it's something that can like quickly be done because they already have a common denominator, then please simplify. But I am actually okay with this answer. And that is something, again, that we'll be talking about throughout the years, like what answers are acceptable. But this is the Mrs. Bizzagno level of acceptability for this problem.